Very good morning to you all, our dear listeners and viewers. Welcome to yet another edition of ACFIM Talks. Today, it's a public holiday. It was declared yesterday as the country again ensures that the Lord Almighty convenes us and intercedes in the current situation of the COVID pandemic, the second wave we are in, and the country continues to battle the second wave. Yes, unless the Lord intervenes, the fight for COVID can only be won through prayer. So today's edition, I'll be joined later on by a guest who is no stranger to the screen, but also no stranger to the public arena. I'll be introducing him when he gets here, but for those who are wondering who are we hosting this time, we have Honorable Gerald Karuhanga, who is a former Ntungamo Municipality MP. He was also former Youth MP Western, and he also served as a guild president around 2006. So when he gets here, we will get the discussion rolling, and we are discussing a topic none other than where did the COVID money go? But before I start to unpack and give genesis or a foundation that can inform our discussion, allow me first of all to encourage, welcome everyone to be part of this discussion. Join us on our Facebook page. We are live on Facebook, ACFIM. You can also join us on YouTube. We are live. Our YouTube channel is ACFIM Uganda, and also on Twitter at ACFIM UG. So you can be part of the discussion, the conversations, catch this broadcast later on by being part of those three platforms: YouTube, ACFIM Uganda, Facebook Live with ACFIM, and then Twitter at ACFIM UG. It's even there on the screen for you to be able to see and be part of the conversation. My name is Felix, your usual host, Kafuma, who will be moderating this talk show for the next 1 hour. And as is a practice, I usually briefly go through what has highlighted the week. The week has been mainly I think it's the first week ever since the total lockdown. So basically, not much has been happening other than in the area of ministers taking up their new positions and swearing in and handing over offices. It's been a week where people are moving from one ministry to another, and others are bowing out and allowing the newly elected ministers to take up office. Basically, it's been one of those weeks. Also, in the same week, there have been a number of discussions concerning COVID in terms of the numbers, in terms of the crisis, private hospitals concerning the charges that they are levying on patients that are critically ill. There have been discussions around what government can do to intervene in the situation and help out as a regulator, but also as a primary responsible entity that should be availing healthcare facilities to Ugandans. I know discussions are ongoing between the Ministry of Health and the body that brings together practitioners. Let's see how that goes, but I think it's important that the discussions are progressive to relieve Ugandans the heavy costs levied in terms of accessing healthcare facilities in private medical facilities to treat COVID-19, which is becoming a problem. But also there are many success stories. People are getting healed, and I think it's important that media and the president out there should promote and talk more about the positive out of the positivity, the things that are happening out of this situation, so that we can give people hope. Yes, many people are equally getting healed. So it's important that should also give us hope as Ugandans. The medical workers, health workers are working around the clock to ensure that people really recover from the pandemic of COVID-19. So let's continue praying. Let's continue observing the SOPs. Please mask up, avoid crowds, do your social distancing, sanitize and wash your hands regularly. If you don't have serious business, you don't have to access town. You can work from home. I think that's the new normal. And this too shall pass. Yes, and amen to that. That aside, as we wait for Honorable Gerald Karuhanga, I'm hoping that in the next 5 minutes, he should have joined us, should be able to join us. And we answer this golden question of where did the COVID money go? I know already there have been appropriations and that going towards handling the second wave of COVID. But before, we also need to concern ourselves. I think it was last week when the report by the Auditor General on COVID money revealed discrepancies, fraud, and procurement irregularities. But before, I think that was the June 2021 Attorney General's report on COVID. But remember, I think around last year in December, again, there were preliminary reports indicating to gross mismanagement of COVID funds. In March 2021, again, the Attorney General presented the audit report to Parliament that looked into how the different ministries, departments, and agencies in the financial year of 2019-2021 handled the COVID funds and pointed to mismanagement of funds amounting to 311 billion shillings. Okay, so 3 months down the road, come June, fast forward, and a report now is presented again on COVID money and does point to gross abuse of COVID money, especially in relation to the procurement irregularities. The report raises serious concerns in the way COVID money was stolen through botched procurements, cases where hired contractors never delivered goods and services as expected. It also points to a number of entities who undertook procurements not fully adhering to the procurement rules and regulations. Part of that money until now, according to the audit report, remains not fully unaccounted for. In fact, 1.3 billion, which is about 5% of the money that was disbursed to 17 entities, remain unaccounted for. By the time the audit was conducted by the Auditor General, probably the subsequent audit will cover this discrepancy. We hope, we really hope. But also, 94 out of 135 entities that received donations in kind. You remember the drive, the presidential drive, mobilizing citizens to donate whatever they had, both in cash and in kind. Many of those entities that received donations in kind didn't carry out evaluation of these donations as required by the law. It was important that if you receive milk, if you receive blankets, if you receive whatever it was, cooking oil, if you receive food items, it was supposed to be evaluated and establish the value of those donations as the law demands. 69 of these entities didn't record the donations also in the store. So I think the store management had challenges there. So these donations, there was no way. The report does indicate that the store management system didn't capture the records of these donations that were given to these entities that had been given in kind by Ugandans who heeded the call of the president at that time. It's also important that viewers out there know that 10.5 billion, which is about 4% of the total money raised. Remember, 4.36 trillion was raised through grants, donations, and loans towards the fight of COVID. So 10.5 billion of that amount in 6 entities was diverted to handle other things other than the items that had been budgeted for or dispersed for. So you have a diversion of donated items for other purposes. And to be important to understand, if, for example, if vehicles, if items like foodstuffs were donated and then they are diverted, they were diverted to where? For what purpose? Because if it has always been a habit to divert funds in Uganda. But now I want to understand how you divert donated items. And when you divert them for what purpose? When the Honorable joins us, probably will throw more light on that. The culpable ministries, according to the report, are mainly the Ministry of Health. I think it was advanced 100 billion. That is understandable because it's the lead agency in this fight against COVID. The Ministry of Defense, of course, they have to handle security. They have to be part of the COVID interventions. They received 16 billion. Uganda Police Force received 21.2 billion. Uganda Prisons, 30.4 billion, and Office of the President, 1.3 million, including local government, selected local government districts that also received COVID money. So these entities are pointed out by the report to have had what we would call procurement challenges concerning COVID money. So it's important to understand exactly if you are looking for a smoke gun where the money went, who spent the money, and the anomalies in procurement. These are the ministries that are culpable according to the Auditor General's report for June 2021. So the discussion is really about to understand, okay, if you raise 4.36 trillion Uganda shillings through grants, through donations, through loans, probably to help someone out there, of this amount, 284 billion was mobilized through supplementary budget. I think you remember the supplementary budget, and this money is exclusive of the money that was given to MPs. I think it was about, if I'm not mistaken, either 6 or 10 billion that was advanced to the MPs. That money that angered the public, including the president, and the MPs tried to justify why they should receive that money. It's exclusive of that supplementary budget. But also 27 billion came from the contingency fund, 11.6 billion from cash donations by individuals and companies, and then materials that were donated were worth 23 billion Uganda shillings. So cumulatively, you have about 4.36 trillion raised to fight COVID. So now, 6 months down the road, the Auditor General's report does reveal that that money was grossly abused, especially through procurement irregularities and potential cases of fraud. So the golden question in the room is, where did this COVID money go? And of course, when Honorable Gerald Karuhanga joins us, he was part of that parliament that approved and passed the supplementary budget. He was part of that parliament that approved and passed requests for loans to fight COVID. And I'm sure he must have interested himself to follow the money to see whether it was used for its intended purpose. And he should be able to share with us from his perspective as a former legislator who was part of the August House that approved COVID requisitions, where this money went. But briefly, I've been sharing with you how different ministries and the amounts of money that were allocated to those ministries and entities and departments and agencies, how it was used, and the potential amounts that were abused. It's unfortunate that we don't have any person from any of those ministries to defend this position, but probably we hope as we move along, probably at some point, I will host either someone from the Ministry of Health or someone from the Ministry of Defense, or Office of the President, or with a spokesperson for government to throw more light and clarify the audit findings concerning how this money was spent, and the golden question, where this money was spent, how it was spent, and spent on what. Ugandans are very interested to get these answers. Remember, we are in the second wave, and again, money has been allocated to fight the second wave. So if we can't learn from the first wave and how monies were utilized and used, I think it will not help in moving forward how we can now better utilize the resources mobilized to fight COVID in the second wave. The president, when he was swearing in the new cabinet, he presided over that ceremony at Kololo grounds, that he promised how he was going to be tough, again tough on fighting corruption. And he also defended the choice of his cabinet. He hailed the Prime Minister, Right Honorable Robin Nabanja, that he is the right person to help him fight corruption, especially when it comes to addressing government business in Parliament. And I've also been seeing a number of ministers after taking over their new offices during the handover, pledging to fight corruption. I listened to Honorable Jessica Lupo, who is now the current Vice President, pledging to fight corruption. I listened to the Right Honorable Prime Minister pledging to fight corruption. Looks like it is one of those things the President also has pledged to fight corruption. So we are discussing a question of potential corruption in the way COVID money was used. If we are to go by these pledges, I think it's also important to audit and understand how the first wave COVID money, when everybody was under lockdown and government mobilized resources to fight the first wave of the pandemic, how that money was used in real terms. And also, if the pledge is as true as expressed, those found culpable be brought to book. I think it's high time people paid for their sins. It's high time we walk the talk when we say that we are pledging to fight corruption, and you have a smoking gun, and I think you investigate, and those found culpable should literally be brought to book. It's also important that I point out something that may interest you to try to connect the dots. Remember, COVID happened at a time when the country was in the middle of a political fiesta, an election campaign season. And we know that in a period where people are trying to seek re-election, or others are trying to enter into elective positions, money is the language. So the ACFIM preliminary report on pre-campaign spending does point to a spike in expenditure between the period of around April 2020 to a period of until the actual election season. So when you connect the dots, we are looking at a period that coincides with the time when COVID was, there was a total lockdown to fight COVID, but also that's the time when there was a lot of expenditure by the different government entities that had been given resources to fight COVID. So from where I come from, there are no total coincidences. So when I try to connect the dots, when I look at the spike in spending and when I look at the report of the Auditor General pointing to gross abuse of COVID money through procurements, you see a relationship between the possibility where that money could have gone. I hope you're following me. It is highly possible that also part of that money ended up in financing election campaigns of individuals, especially those individuals who found themselves in positions of advantage to access COVID money in this case. And without necessarily preempting the ACFIM study report, which will be released at some point, you realize that when you look at the expenditure of some of the political candidates who at that time were also busy, engaged, or part of the task force, or part of the team that was fighting COVID, you will see that the way they spent their expenditures on campaigns are quite high. And of course, for us, we'll always keep asking those questions: the source of the money. Where did they get that money that they spent on their campaigns to spend so exorbitantly? Is it a coincidence that they spend so much at a point in time when they are in custody, or they have access to, or they are engaged in fighting COVID, whereas in some way or another they access COVID resources? Probably yes, probably no. I think these are questions. Me as a researcher, I don't just leave things the way they are. I try to apply wisdom and reasoning. So I'm not saying anything here. I'm just saying that it's too much of a coincidence that COVID money in that period between March and until the elections, and also the spending, political spending by some candidates in the same period, is high, while COVID money is grossly abused in procurements. What other explanations would you have? So I'm trying, probably Honorable, when he joins us, he will either dispel my fears, probably I'm being paranoid, or it will confirm my fears that probably some of that money ended up in financing election campaigns of some candidates in this case. But also, interestingly, we've also seen in political, we've seen economic activities during the lockdown period, especially big structures coming up during the COVID lockdown. Well, someone may argue that, okay, that's the time when people were able to make use of their savings. That's when they had the time. They made savings since they weren't taking kids to school, they made substantial savings. They made substantial savings on money that they would ideally have spent on education, money they would have spent on all these other things since there was a total lockdown, and that money was then diverted to undertake serious construction projects but we are talking about construction projects that are worth billions. During lockdown, there was so much activity in terms of electing big and huge commercial structures. Is it that also a coincidence? I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots. Where did this money go? Remember, there's no better way of abusing public resources, especially in Uganda, other than through procurement. The World Bank study, I think for 2010, 2011, I don't know any other, did allude to Uganda losing annually over 500 billion on procurement-related corruption. Okay, so fast forward, probably that figure could have doubled. I think we lose much more than that. Fast forward, Auditor General's report does allude to procurement-related abuse of COVID money. In the same period, we are seeing individuals electing huge structures, commercial structures. Erecting huge commercial structures at a time when COVID money is grossly abused. I'm trying to connect the dots here. Could the money possibly have ended up in financing these huge commercial structures, be it apartments, be it malls, during this period? It's too much of a coincidence. And again, we are trying to connect the dots here. So the golden question of where COVID money went is a question that I think Ugandans need an answer. Why? This money, if you look at the source of this money, it's partly when you talk about a supplementary budget, you are talking about taxpayers' money. Me and you, we were taxed. So we are stakeholders in this. So I'm justified really to ask a question: where did my money go as a taxpayer? So should you be asking the same question: where did my money go as a taxpayer? So the grants, the donations, many of you, I remember when the president made a call, a clarion call, mobilizing the public to donate whatever they can. This was a collective. It was a collective effort. Each one of us got involved in one way or another. I remember seeing some young people donating as low as 10,000, 15,000, and 1,000. People donating items, companies donating vehicles, donating mattresses, donating jerry cans, donating sanitizers, all sorts of items. These donations, according to the General's report, were also abused, both in kind and also the cash. The money, the money that came from the contingency fund, these are monies of taxpayers as well. Now, the loans, remember, we've been having a discussion about the loans Uganda is getting and the implications of these loans in future terms, how in fact our debt portfolio is starting to become, we are getting into a situation where our debt portfolio might be unsustainable, although the Ministry of Finance keeps telling us that we are good to go. Yes, as of now, we've not crossed the red line, but going by the patterns, I think we may cross the red line anytime soon, given our insatiable appetite to borrow. Part of this money that was borrowed ended up in fighting the pandemic. It's part of the money that the Auditor General alludes to are being abused. So I think it is important for everybody out there who is listening, as we wait for the Honorable to join us on set, to answer these questions. We need these answers. Where did this money go in affirmative, but also beyond that, if we are to learn, how do we then safeguard abuse of COVID money that now is being mobilized, that is being used to fight the second wave? If we don't get these answers, if we don't see action taken, we may have the same story. I might be on set 12 months down the road with another Auditor General's report again telling us how COVID money for the second wave was abused, without answers to how COVID money for the first wave was spent, and without action taken on the culprits of those who spent, who abused COVID money for and the first wave. Probably, and yes, like I'm saying, probably, it is possible that not all this money was abused as alleged. Probably it's the documentation that some accountability receipts are missing, that these entities, when given opportunity and chance, they will be able to account properly and account to zero. The money is disbursed to them. But as of now, going by the Auditor General's report, we have a problem. We have a scandal. We have a corruption issue to address concerning how COVID money was abused. How much money are we talking about here that was abused? We are talking about over 300 billion Uganda shillings abused. Over 300 billion Uganda shillings abused. Abused through botched procurements. Abused through contractors that never delivered goods and services, and those that delivered didn't deliver to the specifications. Someone may ask, is that true? Okay, let me put it this way. You remember the beans? Many of you remember very well how the beans that came as relief to the vulnerable, especially those within the Kampala metropolitan area, the Greater Kampala metropolitan area, how the quality of the beans, the quality of the posho. That's the smoke gun. They are showing you how probably the specifications of the items that were procured raise are highly suspicious. Let me also give another smoke gun. You know that during that lockdown, as a country, we were supposed to prepare the healthcare system, the infrastructure, to be able to deal with COVID pandemic. We were supposed to prepare to be able to deal with the situation we are in right now. Where are we right now? Last week, the country was in a panic mode because of the scarcity of oxygen, a very important ingredient when it comes to fighting COVID. Now, you lock down a country, justifiably so, and one of the things during the lockdown you tell Ugandans is that you are using this period to prepare, equip the healthcare system to be able to deal with the COVID issue. God is gracious to us to the point that during that period, our cases are very low, meaning you do not spend a lot of money trying to treat COVID patients, so you have an opportunity to use the resources mobilized to put in place the required infrastructure, to put in place the required structures, buy hospital beds, build or put in place more oxygen plants, that we have production that can match the numbers of COVID, procure medicines in numbers, have health workers in numbers, facilitate them in numbers. Basically, you have the time to do that. Fast forward, the reality hits. A second wave breaks. This time, it is testing your commitment of preparation of the sector to be able to combat COVID. What happens? Here's the situation. You have a crisis of oxygen. You have a crisis of beds. I remember the president asking that question in one of his addresses. I think it was the first address, shortly after, it was the first address before he came and locked the country again, where he asked the question, what happened to having more hospital beds? So you don't have oxygen, you don't have enough oxygen, you don't have enough hospital beds. I was watching news, and I think some health workers, I think for Entebbe grade B, hadn't yet received their allowances. Basically, things that I would expect to have been handled by this COVID money during the first lockdown, so that when the second wave comes, we are fully prepared, are still the challenges we are grappling with. I'm just pointing. I'm just trying to connect the dots, probably. Where did the COVID money go? So the question is, if we were not prepared enough to address the second wave, yet money was mobilized to prepare the sector to deal with COVID, including the second wave, where did that money go? Remember, I've pointed out, could it be possible that that money went into financing politics of some individuals? I need to qualify that. Is it possible that that money ended up financing business empires of certain individuals who had access to those resources? And now here we are faced with a situation where you have an healthcare system that is not very well prepared, as we had been told, to deal with the second wave. I understand the numbers are high, but and I really applaud the work they have done so far. But for me, the situation of having a crisis of oxygen, a crisis of hospital beds, the things that ideally would have been handled during the first lockdown, it doesn't cut it. For me, it doesn't cut it. And I think when the Auditor General comes out with such a damning report, I'm quick to relate the crisis we are in, and the money is abused, and I'm like, there's a problem here. But like I said, I'm just connecting the dots here. I want us to go for a short break as I try to mobilize and see where Honorable, because I was told Honorable will be joining us in 5 minutes, and I've been making a case for the last 30 minutes there. I think let's break for about a minute, and I try to locate Honorable, because he has the answers. I don't have the answers. Me, I'm just trying to use my little understanding to connect the dots. So let's break. Oh, Honorable has joined. Honorable, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm good, Honorable. Good to see you again after a long time.
Yeah, sure. Glad to see you too.
How are you, Honorable, today?
I'm okay. I'm pushing on. That could be better if it wasn't for the pandemic and the terrible governance.
I know, I understand. While you were away, I was trying to make a case, trying to connect the dots, probably where did this money end up? And now that you've joined the set, like I said, I remember I already introduced you in your absence, by the way. So people know who I am, and they have been eagerly waiting for you to join SET. But for those who are just joining SET, yeah, I have with me Honorable Gerald Karuhanga. He is the former Ntungamo Municipality MP. He lost, unfortunately. I don't know. Are you still with Ant because you crossed to Ant?
First of all, I don't think I lost. I just the regime decided to bring the soldiers. So I'm sure if you go to Ntungamo, asking 10 people or 5 or 4 will tell you our MP is still Karuhanga.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
So there was foul play. Okay, let me correct that. You never lost. They just there was foul play. They rigged you out according to your account. Yeah, but you were also a former youth MP. I think the first time I interacted with you, then you were a youth MP, and we did a lot of work together when I was still working for Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda. But also, your journey at some point, you were a guild president for Makerere University. I think that's when I started tracking your political journey in 2006. So you are no stranger to being in leadership circles. But it's good to have you. And the golden question is about where did the COVID money go? I'm sure you've seen already the Attorney General's, sorry, the Auditor General, the report by the Auditor General. The first report came out in March, and then you were still in Parliament. That alluded to abuse of about 300 billion Uganda shillings. The second report comes out in June, now confirming that there was gross abuse of monies, COVID money, through procurements.
Yes.
So where did that money go?
Well, firstly, I don't know whether I'm the right person to say where the money went. What I remember is that with the colleagues in the budget committee, we took it upon ourselves to really push and make serious inroads into what the Minister of Finance had proposed for purposes of securing lots and lots of money for this COVID pandemic fight. Now, at the back of our mind, we had the hindsight of these fellows are serious. They are going to utilize the money because it's a very critical pandemic. It's not a joke. I mean, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people being lost even in well-developed lands. So money went to initial. Actually, the Minister of Finance wanted this money, and we told them, look, this is not your duty. Your obligation is to make sure that the other entities receive money. You are not a spending entity. And that even raised the eyebrows very, very strong, because you could see that from the onset was a scheme, a huge scheme to swindle these resources. So that we rejected and we succeeded. And the money was sent to the different entities. So Ministry of Health got the resources they were supposed to get, districts got their money, and then police and UPDF. Now, what is very disheartening, even before the General came up report, it was all over the place. The inflation of prices of goods. So an example would be, let's say, gumboots. So gumboots, we all know that gumboots, you go anywhere where they are white or black or blue. They should be in the region of 20,000 shillings. That's just a simple example. So that's, everyone knows that we put this is very quickly funded. And hello. Are we
Yeah,
together?
yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Although you're a bit breaking, but I can hear you. Yes.
Yes. So we realized that indeed there was such a huge scheme
Okay.
that COVID survived the financial racket circles. So it wasn't actually surprising at all.
Honorable, your connection is a bit poor.
That the good man, Mr. Mwanga, see that in this sort of billions, hundreds of billions of COVID money were swindled. But you see, again, this is not out of the blue. This is largely the very characteristic of this government. So if it's not global fund, it is Gavi funds, then it is Chogam funds, then it is the oil scandal, and then so it is. I mean, even from the onset, I have a question with the particular fellows in the health sector who came to the budget committee. I said, look, for one, have an expenditure a few months from now, because I remember people grilling you and exposing you of your corrupt tendencies. So I in any way in a shock. But again, I have to really press hard. There is no way we can allow.
Honorable, you are making very interesting points, but your network keeps breaking. I don't know. I'm losing you somehow in between.
Stealing public resources. Is technology failing us?
Yeah. I think it's your network, which you because I keep losing you a bit. Now it's better. Yes. Now I think now.
No.
Can you hear me, Honorable?
Technology seems to be failing us.
Can you hear me? Okay, me, I can hear you. I can hear you, Honorable. Can you hear me? I think it's a network challenge. Honorable, are you there?
Yes, hello. We seem to have lost each other.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's better. So yeah. So but okay, that point you're making. Help me understand, because for me, I've been trying to connect the dots while you were away. If you ask me from a layman's perspective, because we are talking about the country raises about 4.36 trillion through grants, donations, and loans. And along the way, we are here having a discussion of how that money was abused. And for me, the first areas I'm possibly pointing at as conduits through which, or where possibly the money went, I could say election campaigns, because COVID happened at a time when people, when Uganda was locked in a political season. Is it possible that this money went to finance election campaigns of some individuals who had access to that money? Help me understand, because I'm trying to make a theory here, which I can't substantiate authoritatively, but there's a smoking gun. Secondly, also, is it possible that that money ended up financing huge personal projects of individuals? Because again, during this period, we saw many Ugandans. Did I lose Honorable? I was trying to make a case here because I want him to help me connect the dots to also the constructions that happened, big malls, apartments during the COVID period. I think I lost Honorable. Let him come back and help me. Honorable, you're back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Unfortunately, I didn't hear you for almost a minute or so. So
Okay,
I
let me
didn't
repeat
hear the
my
question you
question
raised. I
very
don't know whether
fast.
you hear me now.
I can hear you, but let me repeat my question very fast. I was saying that is it possible, because I'm trying to make here a theory, is it possible that this money ended up in financing election campaigns? Because we're talking about COVID money that came during a time when Uganda was locked into a political season. Could that money have ended up in financing some of the election campaigns for some candidates who had access to this money? Honorable, did you get my question?
I don't know why the network is acting up. Hello, are you there?
I'm there, and me, I can hear you very well.
Do
Honorable, are you there?
Yes. You know, I
Did you
missed
get my question?
for some reason the network is use the
Okay. My question quickly was about is it possible that the COVID money ended up in financing election campaigns because of the timing between COVID, the timing of COVID and also the political season Uganda was in? Did you get the question, Honorable?
So you're asking whether the money, you're asking whether the money ended up in the campaigns. I think at
Yes.
least I've heard that. Yes, I wouldn't be surprised because again, the money that was at play in this the just the presidential parliamentary campaign, no one would be surprised, and I don't think anybody would be overstretching anything to suggest it was actually probably spent in campaigns. I remember in Ntungamo, it wasn't the soldiers alone, but people were there was a district 50,000 shilling each voter. So I would completely be unsurprised actually if this money wasn't equally put in those kinds. Now we must also appreciate that we are really in a crisis, a governance crisis as a country. I just think the expenditure and the management of the COVID resources is one of those clear cases, examples that epitomize or portray clearly how deep we've gone in terms of terrible management of public affairs. So it's just one, it's a huge reminder that we are really on par as far as God concerned, and that unless we Ugandans come out strongly, engage to really struggle for ourselves, because the economies we admire, the places countries out there, things being to them, people pushed and pushed and pushed until they got better leaders. They got better, not just a few, not just some, but everyone. So the COVID, think about it. We have an outcry, a crisis of oxygen. Oxygen in all health centers. The other day I saw the doctors saying, yeah, people want us to reduce the prices, but we used to buy a cylinder of oxygen at 400,000, and now we are buying it at 1.8 million. This is
Wow. The connection of Honorable is a bit erratic. Honorable, you're breaking a bit.
So,
okay, I think I'm losing Honorable.
you've lost me.
Wow, I've lost.
Oh.
Yes, the network from your end is quite erratic.
Is a problem. I don't know what could actually be the problem. It's really becoming a challenge. But what I'm saying is that we have a crisis and a serious crisis, and unless we get to do something about it, we are really in trouble. I know you look at the cases that we are getting every single day, cases of poor person because of COVID. And if you find that basically now people are dying largely, especially those in hospitals, largely because they can't get basics. And one of them, because again, no one should imagine that it's rocket science to obtain oxygen. No, it's not. It's even embarrassing that you know, as a country, you can't even provide oxygen patients. And we don't have as many huge number of cases that we hear out there in other places.
Yeah.
So especially the ones that are reported. So I'm wondering if where we are already we are, because I mean, I don't know whether we really thought through it very well. For some, always wondered why on earth we don't study and appreciate how other economies have progressed. Any serious country that has moved from humble beginnings to great, they started with the people. So they made sure the poor are healthy.
They were
And
educated.
then they invested more. So then followed and the other things. The other way, we seem to want to invest in roads and then in human beings later. But you know why we find ourselves in this? It's just one reason. Because what informs our decision in government is greed. Is how can I make a cut? How can I make some money? Not it's on how we can impact on people's lives, on how we improve the plight of our people. So it's more of how can we make how much cut where. So that is, and the 7.5 years I served in the Public Accounts Committee. Basically, you could see that most people in public service, what basically informs their decisions, what motivates them to work, is what can get these projects in these funding opportunities.
Okay.
It's another sad. It's not a case. It's just another terrible sad scandalous.
Okay. Yeah, Honorable. My last question. So that I can let you go because our time is fast spent. My last question that I want you to help us understand is that okay now we now have a second wave, and again there is money that has been allocated to deal with the issue of COVID. What should we expect? Are we expecting the same script? It's just the same script, different cast, or probably this new regime? When I say regime, I mean okay, the new cabinet. This new cabinet will perform better compared to the previous cabinet that handled COVID under the first wave. For example, they have proposed instead of giving people direct relief, they will send money on their mobile phones, use vouchers or send them money to avoid the mistakes that were done in the first wave of COVID, where supplying posho and beans came with challenges that you're talking about. What should we expect?
I didn't get most of what you are saying, but if I can put together what I had is we are trying to compare the previous about to items as vis-a-vis what they're trying to of cash. I don't know what that question is. Proceed. The cash approach, if well managed, would be a better approach because then they will not have complaints of saying, oh, this posho is like this, or these beans are rotten, or and then, but most importantly, it's even also much easier to count if people really are serious about accountability. We have 3 million numbers on across the country. With the amount of then there's a threshold and say maybe people you have not received this amount this much in this and then also you work with almost every community or village has certain rates. Not easy to distribute anything to masses, but if what information or the intentions and the implementation win support for people who are really in need, then the effectiveness of it is
Wow. The network for Honorable is really not good.
the child for their own cuts, looking out for money. Yeah, I don't know if the network seems to have become a real problem.
Yeah, the network is really erratic, Honorable. Anyway, I think I'll at some point in time later on, I think we'll revisit this discussion. We'll see how we can address the problem of network on your end, and we revisit this discussion and conclude it, because somehow the number of points we were trying to make, which I was failing to pick, and including our viewers out there were failing to pick, because it was important for us to understand, to make sense of the Attorney General's report, on the COVID money, how it was spent, but probably looking at connecting the dots. Could it have ended up in politics? Could it have ended up in private enterprises? We saw very many huge infrastructures coming up, apartments, malls during the same period. We are trying to connect the dots where that money went, and probably we'll come back to this discussion later on. Do you have any last words? I can give you 1 minute to make your last words. Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't know. I don't had it.
Wow. Apologies to all our viewers and listeners out there. It's network challenges, most likely coming from the end of Honorable. So we will revisit this discussion. Okay. Allow me to. Yeah, Honorable. Let me bring this to a close. Really, our time is fast spent, and I'm 6 minutes into top of the hour, and we're having challenges connecting. We will come back to this discussion topic again. Probably be on standby at some point. We'll mobilize you again when we are very sure that the network issues on your end are addressed. We'll work on that, and then we'll come back to this topic and discuss it in detail. Where did the COVID money go? I've been with Honorable Gerald Karuhanga, who is the former Ntungamo Municipality MP. He's also the former MP for Western region, but also is the former guild president, Makerere University. We've been trying to discuss and understand where did the COVID money go. Unfortunately, I need to bring this to a close. But we can keep the conversation going. We'll revisit this discussion at some point. I wish you all the best. Felix Kafuma has been my name moderating this session. Have a blessed weekend. Please stay safe. Bye-bye.
COVID-19 lockdown has left us poor. Money from candidates won't make you rich. Do not be desperate. Focus on issues, not money. Often money used in campaigns is dirty money. Do you know its source? Corruption, mafia, drug trafficking, human trafficking, theft from national budget, self-seeking foreigners, selfish businessmen, selfish money lenders. Don't abandon your duty. Elect quality leadership, not big spenders.